Oh, hello. Welcome back to the last lecture in the corporate finance. Um, so this will be our last lecture in the corporate in this course for this semester, and we have we might be if there's 1 hour left, we might use it to review the homework one because we couldn't quite finish that at the time. Now, so we stopped here in the right before this slide, and it was I told it's about Modigliani and Miller theorem. Of course, it's usually referred to as MM1, and it was published in 1958. Of course, Modigliani and Miller are economists and financial economists at the time in the 1950s, and I told you 1950s was like a revolutionary time in finance. A lot of things came out, discount cash flow model came out in the 1950s, and the Gordon growth model came out in the 1950s. Now, and I pronounced this name as Modigliani last time, but then it is Italian name. I mean, because there is an Italian artist, modern artist named Modigliani, spelled exactly in the same way, but that's how it is pronounced in Italian. So in the U.S., because in the U.S., we don't, people generally, I personally respect the foreign pronunciation, the language. Foreign languages have their own way of, especially, in French, there's a particular way the last final consonant, is silent. And all those rules, language by language, I respect. So I would pronounce it as in Italian, Modigliani. But keep in mind, some people may pronounce it as Modigliani, right? But anyway, so restrictive, but Modigliani and Miller, MM1, is based on a very restrictive assumption. What is that about? I mean, first of all, what is MM1, Modigliani and Miller about? It's about the optimal capital structure, right? So basically, with the leverage, as the leverage, increases, the earnings per share increases and return on equity increases. I mean, that idea. But Modigliani and Miller in 1958, in their first theorem, came up with a claim that leverage is irrelevant. Right? That's quite a striking claim, isn't that right? And it's not only there is a couple of irrelevancy theorem in debt policy. I mean leverage policy, right? Capital structure. Modigliani and Miller in 1958 claimed that leverage is irrelevant. Leverage is irrelevant, right? And then we don't have time to go into dividend policy, but in dividend policy, there was also a claim that dividend is irrelevant in affecting price. But if we have time, and if in another in another course, if we can get into a dividend policy, maybe with online distance learning mode, maybe I can squeeze in dividend policy, but currently, with the current scheme, this is all the time we have. So maybe we won't be able to delve into a dividend policy, but there are some irrelevancy theorems in corporate finance. Now, so anyway, so their argument in MM1 was basically leverage is relevant. But for that argument to work, certain conditions, certain assumptions must be met in the first place. In other words, and these assumptions are very restrictive because in reality, it's impossible in reality. I mean, it's not realistic. But under these assumptions, first of all, no income tax. If there's no income tax, first of all, think about it. The benefit of debt comes mainly from the tax shield. Isn't that right? Tax shield. But if there's no income tax, then there will be no tax shield. So of course, then leverage will be irrelevant. And the capital market is perfectly efficient with no transaction cost, right? No flotation cost, and then that would make that would take away like flotation costs and things like that. No cost to bankruptcy. No bankruptcy cost. Also, no bankruptcy cost also implies even if the default risk goes up. Now, what is bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is a result of the default, right? And as you take on more debt, as leverage increases, then default risk increases. And how is it reflected? As the leverage increases, then borrowing cost will increase. That's the reality, isn't that right? That means the firms cannot or individuals cannot borrow at a constant rate. As the leverage goes up, your borrowing rate will go up. But then no bankruptcy cost implies that leverage won't increase the borrowing cost, right? Cost of debt, right? And investors and companies can borrow as much as they want at the same rate. Now, all of this is really restrictive and unrealistic assumption, right? But if those assumptions hold, then their theorem MM1 will is valid, right? So we understand, there's a contrast, between assumption and the reality. And with MM1, they resulted in independence hypothesis. Independence means the same thing as irrelevance. Now, there's value of the firm is independent of the capital structure. In other words, leverage is irrelevant. Leverage is irrelevant, right? Value of the firm. Value of the firm is also called enterprise value, right? Market capitalization means only the market value of the equity. Value of the firm is value current market value of both of the free cash flow. That's the market value of the firm, which is also called enterprise value, and it's all based on the present value of the future cash flow, free cash flow, right? Future free cash flow, and then. But then it's the result of the contributions of both equity and debt, right? So capital structure is critical, right, in calculating the weighted average cost of capital. But the reality is as cheaper debt is added, in other words, leverage goes up, cost of equity will go up, because the default risk is going up. Investors would demand equity holders will demand higher return because of the higher risk. And then, uh, uh, but that is quite logical, right? But even with that, logical result, right? Logical result, still value is independent of the leverage capital structure. That was MM1, claim of argument of MM. Why? Now, this that's actually omega in Greek character omega, but it looks like W. So the weight of expensive. Think about it. As the debt increases, right? As the leverage increases, using more debt, that means the use of equity will go down. So even though cost of equity or the required return goes up, because there's less and less portion of equity, the weight of equity goes down as the weight of cheaper debt goes up. So it will retain, right, the constant weighted average cost of capital. And with constant average weighted average cost of capital, right, the value of the company will be independent of the capital structure. That's what I was saying. So here's the graphically, it is represented like this. The first one is the value of the company, enterprise value of the firm. Firm's value remains constant. And the reason is, although cost of equity goes up and cost of debt remains constant, and this was the assumption, no bankruptcy cost, and you can borrow at a constant rate, no matter how much you borrow, right? Unlimited borrowing at a constant rate. Then the weight is not shown, cannot be expressed here, but the weight of this goes up. Weight of debt goes up, although cost of equity goes up. Weight of equity goes down. So think about it. The final effect is constant. Final net result, net effect is constant cost of weighted average cost of capital, right? Okay. Now, and then also to support their theory, MM1, critical, important, very crucial concept is called arbitrage concept. And what's an arbitrage? Arbitrage is an opportunity to make profit with no risk, zero risk profit opportunity is called arbitrage. And how can that be possible? It's also it can refer to a situation where you can make profit by buying and selling the same thing simultaneously in two different markets. Now think about it. If you can buy iPhone 10, and there's no way you can buy iPhone 10 under $1,000, but let's say, I mean, for wherever geographically, the price cannot be different because this price is directly controlled by Apple through their Apple stores. I mean, nowhere else you can buy iPhone 10, right, or iPhone 11. And then, but somehow, let's say you found, you went to some, upstate small town. If you just, I don't know if you have ever heard of a county called, Cornwall. I mean, Cornwall is a township, not a county. I think it is. What county is it? Like Dutchess County or? It's north of West Point, and so and there's a mountain that's separating West Point and the further upstate. I think Storm King Mountain, Storm King, which is a huge, mountain. And then, so going there, Cornwall, going to Cornwall, you have to, uh, you know, you have to take, 9 west, and then Highway 9 West, and that scales up the mountain and down again. So the town of Cornwall is almost like secluded from, from metropolitan New York, greater New York area. It's almost like separated by a big mountain. Of course, you can reach it by Hudson if you take a boat, but taking a land route, you have to go over the mountain. But Cornwall is a very sleepy, nice town. Sleepy, um, like Sleepy Hollow, but there's actually Sleepy Hollow, but a town of Sleepy Hollow, Westchester County, I believe. A legendary town, right? In early American folk tale, Sleepy Hollow, that uh, the folk tale of headless horseman, right? And Ichabod Crane, the school teacher, right? That early American folk tale is based on that staged in that town, Sleepy Hollow. But Cornwall is also there's a huge big medical center in. I don't see. I mean, it's a small town. I mean, it's a big medical center. Uh, you know, compared to in terms of the size of the population of the town. So obviously that medical center is for like several adjacent counties, I believe. But let's say because it seems so isolated and distant from the bustling, metropolitan New York. Maybe something. I mean, if you go to an iPhone store there, I mean, Apple store, you will still find, iPhone selling for iPhone 10 selling for $1,000. But maybe some by a fluke, the their system was, knocked off, for so and only in that town. So you got the price data was all altered, by some fluke. So suddenly, when they look up, the iPhone 10 price was, is $700, right? So it is like a computer error, right? Or IT error, right? Technological due to technological. Suppose you were passing by that town and you happened to stop by an Apple store and you found the price of iPhone 10 is 700. What would you do? You will buy iPhone 10 there, isn't it right? I mean, and you're not going to buy just one. You will buy maybe 10. Why? Because the minute you bring it to New York City, I mean, you can keep one for yourself, but you can sell iPhone 10 to other people for $1,000 because the price is 1,000. Normally everywhere you make $300, right? Instantaneously, $300 per unit, right? But then think about it. That's an example of arbitrage, right? But actually, the true arbitrage, that's not true arbitrage. True arbitrage means not even spending your own money. You don't have to spend your own money to make profit. How can you not spend your own money? How is it possible? And without even spending your own money, there's no risk. There should be no risk. How can that be? So, well, it is possible if short sale works. And what's a short sale? Uh, Short sell or short sale, short selling a stock, short selling a real estate is a different thing, slightly different thing. But short selling a stock, short sell is happening a lot. What does short sell mean? You don't have, let's say you wanna, you're looking at you've been tracking Apple. I've been tracking Apple since like 2005, so 15 years I've been tracking Apple. Uh, but I have the data gathered over the last 15 years. Um, 5 year data every semester. Now, so you're looking at Apple, and the currently, let's say Apple is $300, and let's say you're betting that Apple's going to go down, and you're betting it's going to go down to 250 within 1 month, or within 2 weeks. So then you don't have any Apple, and you're not willing to buy Apple at this point. If the price goes down to 250, why would you buy? Why would you pay $300? No, but nobody knows, if it's going to really go down to 50. You are just betting with some, probability. You think there's a 50% probability it's going to go down to 50. That means there's a 50% probability is going to go the other way. But you are betting on the probability. Even if there's 1% more probability, 51% probability is going to go down to 250, but that means 49% probability is going to go up. But you are betting on that 1% probability. Then, of course, the option would be another, story. But what you want to do is, you are going to short sell Apple and buy it back later. Short sell Apple for $300 and buy it back when it's 250. But you might wonder, how can you buy something that you don't own? I mean, you might say, Professor, didn't you say you don't have any Apple now? Yes, I did. But you don't have to own Apple. Now, first of all, think of it this way. You borrow it from the broker. You borrow from the broker and sell. And then you might say, how can you borrow something and then sell? I mean, you don't own it, and how can you sell? No problem. You will buy it back later. You owe the stocks to the broker, so you owe the stocks to the broker to return the stocks to the broker later, and you will simply need to buy it back. Make sense? So there's no problem. Question is, really the question is whether the price will really drop. Now think about it. If you borrow Apple's shares, let's say 100 shares from the broker and sell it, right? And then for $300, and that's 300 times 100. That's like $30,000. And then when the price drops to 250, then you buy back 250 times 100. 25,000, right? So you pay 25,000, right? But you receive $30,000 already. You buy back at 20. So you made simply $5,000 through this transaction, right? Without using any of your money. And you might wonder then, can the brokers, lend you a stock like that? Don't the brokers stocks that they lend? That could be someone else's stock, right? Broker is only keeping the stocks for their clients, so that's someone else's stock. True, it's someone else's stock. But look at it this way. Suppose you have $10,000 in the bank. You receive $10,000. direct deposited, direct deposited. How do you know $10,000 if $10,000 are direct deposited? How do you know your money is there? Right? So actually, if you think about it, it doesn't really matter whether the money is really there or not. It's what matters is on your banking statement, or bank statement, right? Which is simply through the online banking. If you just open your bank app, right, banking app, and your balance is 10K. It's the digital electronic data, right? That guarantees your money is there. Besides, $10,000 when it's direct deposited, was it originally yours? Does the money have any name, your name on it? No, money doesn't have your name on it. The dollar bills don't have your names on it. Make sense? That's money. Money changes hands. It doesn't have anybody's name on it. Just the same thing. Stocks don't have your name on it. You understand? Stocks don't have your name on it. Suppose you bought 100 shares of Apple. How do you own it? Hmm? Do you have it delivered to your home? No, you don't have it delivered to your home. Even if you get it delivered to your home, you don't write your name on the stock, right? Unless you're keeping it forever, right? And you don't get it delivered to your home. Where is it stored? It is, if you buy, 100 shares of Apple, it is stored in the brokerage, right? So they, in a vernacular, right, financial market vernacular, they call it held in the street name. The stocks are held in the street name. What does that mean? The street address and the name of the brokerage, right? Right? The name and address, street address of the brokerage firm. So held in the street name. You don't actually store it, right? It is stored in the brokerage firm. So brokerage firm has a lot of stocks that they hold, right, for their clients. And just like the bank make use of that, right, the deposits that the bank is holding, they are making use of it. They are lending it to the borrower, right? Just like that, the brokerage firms can lend it, right, to the short sellers who want to short sell, right? And then you short sell, right? And the borrowed stocks. So if you understand that concept, of course, short sell is not perfectly riskless, right? There's a lot of risk actually in the short sell, but at least the concept of not using any of your money, you're making money, not using any of your money, right? That perfectly fits the concept of short sell, right? Arbitrage that fits the concept of arbitrage. So let's take a look at this, argument that Modigliani and Miller made in their theorem one. So if value of the firm were to go up due to leverage. In other words, if leverage is relevant and the value of the firm goes up with the leverage, right? Investors could get an arbitrage profit by short selling leveraged firm. Leveraged firm's value is higher, right, than unleveraged firm, and buying similar unleveraged firm at a less price. Now, this requires a little more, stretch of idea. Actually, leveraged. We're assuming the leveraged firm and the unleveraged firm are the same company. How can they be leveraged and unleveraged at the same time? No, not at the same time. I mean, currently, if the firm is leveraged, highly leveraged, and later, if the firm is, relaxing is leverage or lowering its leverage, right? Which is not likely, because why is the company which is benefiting from leverage lower the leverage and reduce the benefit of leverage, right? Logically, it doesn't make sense. So we're assuming there is a company L and company U, two companies, right? But they are almost, we'll have to assume they are uh, interchangeable. Their stocks are interchangeable, which is unlikely. In reality, that cannot happen, right? But because they are, let's say they are almost identical firms, so let's say their stocks are interchangeable, and one company is company L is highly leveraged, company U is unleveraged, right? Unleveraged means it's completely, without 100% equity, 0% debt, right? And then because they are identical, firms are these two firms are identical in many ways, uh, but the only difference is leverage, and then obviously uh, the leveraged firm stock of the leveraged firm would be valued higher. So use short sell company L and buy company U, right? You make profit here, right? But can it hold? Can it hold for a long time? I mean, in the long run, can it hold in equilibrium? No, why not? Why? The equilibrium will change. Why? Because however, the sell off of there's a large sell off of company L, then the price of company L would go down. Makes sense, because there's a massive sell-off, price will drop, while massive buying up of company U. If this is the case, think about it. Everybody will try to uh, short sell company L and buy company U. Then this huge demand on company U will drive up the price of company U. Makes sense? And the huge, massive sell-off would drive down the price of company L. Make sense? So then, what's going to happen? The price of stock price of company L and company U will uh, settle at the same level. Makes sense? As long as the price of company L is higher, they will sell off, and that will drive down the price. And as long as the uh, uh, company U is bought, right? Huge demand will push it up, and the price will settle at the same point. And there will be no incentive from there on. From there on, there is no more incentive to short sell company L, and buy company U anymore, right? So then the price will be leverage doesn't leverage becomes irrelevant. Leverage doesn't uh, make any a difference in price, right? This is the so the entire process then holds the value of any firm constant at the leverage as the leverage goes up. So this is the argument of MM1. Modigliani and MM in 1950s. Who else was MM in 1950s? Anybody? MM was such a cultural icon. Marilyn Monroe, and then Modigliani and Miller, also MM. So I don't know. In the 50s and 60s, 60s, they like to just contract the name to MM1 and MM2. Okay. But then the result is that the leverage still matters because of the market imperfections, because we this was under a very restrictive assumption, right? If you relax the assumptions, you will soon find out. You will soon realize that it matters. Now, then think about it. What is the so relaxing the assumption? Then then Modigliani and Miller, of course, recognize that their theorem is totally uh, works only under very restrictive assumptions, and it's not totally reflecting the reality. So they started to relaxing those assumptions one by one. First of all, tax system in the anywhere in the world, tax uh, system favors debt financing over equity financing, which means it's not the IRS that favors that. It's for the company. It's for the company. Debt is more favorable due to tax system, right? Why? Because interest expense on the debt is tax deductible, and this is something we already know, right? The dividend on the equity is not tax deductible, right? And also, so if we include corporate taxes in the theorem, right? Interest provides a tax shield. We already know this, right? Uh, you benefit by as much as the tax rate, right? In interest, actual, the cost of debt is uh, lower by as much as the tax rate. So value of the increased value of the company is increased by present value of the tax shield. Benefit of the debt is tax rate times debt. So we already know that, but just to recap why. And the benefit of the debt accrues only to the tax shield, goes to benefit of the tax shield accrues only to the equity holders, right? Benefit of the uh, doesn't go to the tax shield, doesn't go to the bond holders at all. Now, let's think about it. Interest is tax, so what the government gets is, tax rate times EBT, right? Makes sense. And then, therefore, this is, tax times interest, right? Tax rate times interest is the benefit that goes to the stockholders, and present value of that. So tax rate times interest, right? Discounted by the, of course, it's one plus this, but just roughly like this. Cost of debt, which is the the interest rate. Interest is, this is dollar interest. Dollar interest is what? Basically, dollar interest is the amount of debt or bond times cost of debt, interest, right? That would give you the interest, right? In dollars, right? Dollar interest. So KD, cost of debt, they cancel out. KD cancel out, right? So it just eventually turns into tax rate times the amount of bond. Bond is debt, right? Tax rate times amount of bond. So we already understand what this, right? Where the benefit is, all equity firm, 50% debt, 50% equity, right? All equity firm pays more taxes because it receives no, tax shield. Total payments to investors are higher for the leverage. This is something we already did, right? We already know from several lectures. So if we include the tax shield, now it will look like this. The market value of the leveraged firm will, increase with the higher leverage because of the tax shield, right? But unleveraged firm will have nothing to, market value won't change with the level of debt, right? In other words, leverage doesn't change the value of the 100% equity firm or unleveraged firm. Now, what about the cost of capital? We know cost of equity will increase with higher leverage, but the cost of debt after tax rate, adjusted after tax shield, in other words, after adjusting for tax, right? Cost of debt would be lower than cost of unadjusted, right? Just cost of after tax adjusted cost of debt would be lower than original cost of debt. But anyway, cost of weighted average cost of capital would go down as leverage increases because the weight of more expensive equity goes down. The weight of debt leverage goes up, right? So the final effect, right? The net effect would be declining cost of average cost of capital, right? Now, that's the first assumption, tax, right? Second assumption, including bankruptcy costs, right? Now, as leverage goes up past a certain point, concern about bankruptcy increases as well. In other words, default, right? Financial distress, default, right? So debt and equity investors raise both required returns. Yes. In other words, we understand equity holders will increase their required return, but we've been assuming so far uh, uh, the companies can raise that as much debt as they want at the same cost of debt. But think about it as uh, wouldn't the debt holders also demand higher return on their debt? In other words, cost of debt would also go up. So weighted average cost of capital passes its minimum point as price and value peak, right? So graphically, it is like this. The value with value of the leveraged firm continues to go up with the higher leverage because of the tax shield. But then, because of the bankruptcy cost, right, the value would peak at some point and then actually go down. Why? It's because of the weighted average cost of capital. In other words, you're discounting at a higher cost of capital, so the value would have to go down. Make sense? So after passing the optimal capital structure level, in other words, after passing the optimal leverage level, then because the cost of equity increases and cost of debt increases, weighted average cost of capital will increase as well. And as the discount rate increases, the value would decrease. Present value would decrease. Make sense? So this is the Modigliani and Miller theorem 2, which perfectly explains the reality, right? So that means they arrive at the same conclusion anyway, right? The same conclusion. In other words, MM model with taxes and bankruptcy costs concluded that an optimal capital structure exists and benefit MM. But then, although they arrive at the same conclusion, MM's conclusion, right? Conclusions are the same, but the reasonings are different. Meaning MM's reasoning is that the benefit of the leverage is solely due to the taxes, right? So the explanation, but the conventional reasoning is that the benefit is due to the impact of improved performance, earnings per share, and ROE, return on equity, right? So improved performance on investors, impact of improved performance on investors' attitude, right? That is the conventional explanation or conventional approach. But Modigliani and Miller's approach, explained it as it's due to the benefit that is solely due to the taxes, right? Okay. Now, so finally, how does what does this do in corporate finance? I mean, in the context of, in terms of corporate finance, what does this do? It can provide an insight into the M&A, mergers and acquisitions. Why? In many cases, right, a firm buys, acquiring firm buys the stock of a target company at a premium over its market value. Why do they pay more than its market value? Well, there must be some justifiable reason. What's the justifiable reason? The purchase is often and this purchase is often financed with debt, which is called leveraged buyout. What does leveraged buyout mean? Literally, you buy out with the company with the debt. In other words, um, uh, you pay more than even think about it. The equity value of the target company is, let's say, $100 million equity value. Right? Let's just simply make it $1 billion. And so their capital structure is, let's say 50%. I mean, 75% equity and 25% debt. So if 1 billion is their equity, what does that mean? 500 million is their debt. So this is relatively less leveraged firm. I mean, it's not maximally leveraged, right? And I've been telling you, empirically, where is the optimal capital structure found? I've been telling you the optimal capital structure is found somewhere between 30 to 50% debt, right? So if this company's capital structure is currently, 75% equity, 25% debt, you can increase the leverage, right? Still, there's a lot of room for increasing the leverage. Also, if this is the case, then remember ROCE, return on capital employed, right? As long as return on capital employed is, greater than, adjusted, tax after tax adjusted cost of debt, right? There's still juice to be, squeezed, right? You can still squeeze the more juice out of it, right? More juice out of it. So that means you can still increase the leverage, right? So by borrowing money to acquire this firm, all you need is borrow like $1 billion, right? And then if you really borrow $1 billion, right, then eventually the total capital structure of this company will be 100% debt, right? But anyway, you don't borrow all 1 billion, but anyway, let's say you borrow 500 million. Then the capital structure will be then 75% debt and 25% equity after the takeover, right? So that's called leveraged buyout. But why do they do that? Why do they use leveraged buyout? So think about it. If the target company was undervalued due to lack of leverage, then increase value from adding leverage, right? When the leverage goes up, then the earnings per share, return on equity will go up, and then increase in the value from adding the leverage may be greater than the premium paid for the target stock. So it's all worth it, right? That's what, that's the main reason, right? And that is explained, that is so well explained, right? Through the leverage theory, right? Why they are doing the leverage buyout, okay? In a corporate finance context. Okay, all right. All right, so that's it for today. And That's it for today. So thank you for watching. Hope you have had a great semester. I know we've been having, this is not, I cannot say a great semester because of the obvious, reason, the COVID-19. And I know a lot of you are going through difficult times, and difficult time applies to everybody. Um, uh, but we have to do our best to cope with the uh, under whatever disaster situation. Uh, it doesn't mean just because it is a disaster. When you drive, you can just um, uh, run through the red light, or make a left turn anywhere. I mean, things have to be to the best of our abilities. Uh, there are obligations that have to be met, duties that have to be performed, and if you have given your best shot, right? All I'm saying is that we are, all of us are still under the obligation to give it our best shot, right? And so good luck with the final. There is going to be an announcement about the final shortly, and uh, actually, with one, if I believe we have 1 hour left, that will be uh, used for uh, reviewing the homework one that we left, undone. I mean, we only covered one problem in homework one. So I will see you in the next class, or in the next semester if you are, and especially if you're a finance major, you will need to. And if you haven't done, Finance 300 investment analysis, uh, most definitely I will see you in that class. Um, and if you have already taken Finance 300, and I believe you are all done, and if you have done also Finance 250, you're all done with your finance requirement. And if you're graduating, then congratulations. All right, that's it for today, and I will see you in the next semester or class. And that's the end of the video.